If you talk to my parents or people that are older, like 60s or 70s or 80s, they will say Canada is nothing like it used to be at all, like not even close at anywhere. And trying to get hired full time is virtually impossible. Like they want you're working at their hours and you have to be on call all the time. It's been my experience with virtually any work position these days. But it's been like that since I was in my late teens. It's not much to do with the current administration in Canada. The politicians have been abusing us for a very long time. It's good. It's good for acute issues. It's good. We should call it sick care, not health care. We should call it sick care because it's mainly when you get sick. It's mainly based on acute issues. You wouldn't realize, but you might need more vitamin C. That need more of these nutrients than you can get by mouth. We don't realize that. I didn't really realize that. So the Western world there's too much bureaucracy involved in everything, and the banks they're not encouraging saving. They've been encouraging spending, consumption for the past 25 years since around 9/11. In the Western world, but in Canada especially, in my opinion, it's a very anti-human environment. They've been doing this for a long time. They over-regulate, they overtax, they don't pay you any interest in the bank. You're basically living hand to mouth, and you get sick. You're going to get sick, and then when you go to the doctor, you get sicker. And the food we have, it's expensive. It's not available.
I can say 90% of the people have no idea what they're drinking, right? Even from the bottled water that you buy from the store, that's also garbage. Countries like Canada, where their currency is not the global reserve currency, we are at the mercy of the foreign exchange market, right? So, and we're seeing because of all these economical issues, lower GDP and high deficit spending, the Canadian dollar is keep falling against USD. And that is also basically affecting our quality of life here because everything gets expensive. When your currency gets cheaper against the other currencies, because we import a lot of stuff here, right? And we pay in terms of the exchange rate that is set by the market. And if you look at Canadian dollar, it's keep falling. It's keep falling against USD. And I think it is expected to keep fall because of all the economical issues we have. All right, everybody, thanks for joining in. Today, I have invited a very unique guest, I should say, compared to my previous guests on the podcast. And we just want to understand what's happening in Canada from his lens, because a lot of people, they tell me that I'm bashing Canada, I'm anti-Canada. That's certainly not true. I always try to bring some subjects which nobody actually talks about on the mainstream media, and we try to discuss those challenges and try to find solutions. But I met Dave through social media, and then he reached out to me and he wanted to share his story, and we wanted to learn from him how he has grown up in Canada, born in Canada, educated in Canada, but then he finally decided to leave and now living in Ecuador. So let's understand his story, and then put your comments down below. If you have any questions, let me know, and we will try to answer them as well. So without further ado, hi Dave, how's it going?
Oh, it's wonderful. How are things going there?
Not bad, not bad. Summer is always good in Toronto, so I always enjoy summer and patiently wait for the winter coming in. So no complaints. How's things in Ecuador?
Some things are good, some things are bad. It's not perfect anywhere, but there's a lot of people that think that, well, not a lot, but there's some people that think that if they just get out of the situation that they're in, that it's going to magically get better. I said, no, it's not.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, nowhere is perfect. I think you have to compromise on some things. Okay, Dave. So you reach out to me after watching my channel, and as people watch that, I always bring some interesting guests to understand their story in terms of their struggle, their entrepreneur journey. And I wanted to understand, from Dave's story as well, how he started his whole, new gig in terms of become a solopreneur, and how he's helping other people struggling with health issues. So we're going to talk about that as well. But before that, I wanted to understand what actually made him to leave Canada after, living here for pretty much all his life. Leaving a country where you have born and raised, it's not easy. I mean, I'm an immigrant. I know that this was very difficult. I was born in Pakistan. When I left Pakistan, I was 22 years old. I left my parents, my siblings, my cousins, my friends. There's a lot of memories attached to a place where you are born, and it's not easy. Okay, people have to make very difficult decisions to leave the country, and they only do it when they have no choice. Okay, so let's understand from Dave's story. What was those factors that actually pushed him to make that decision?
Yeah, if you talk to my parents or people that are older, like 60s or 70s or 80s, they will say Canada is nothing like it used to be at all, like not even close. So I've been trying to get out of Canada for the past 15 years. So I've had transient health problems that I didn't know what to do about. And so that's what I'm specializing in now. But Canada has been since I've been around. I'm 44 and I was born in '80. So since I was in my late teens, you try to get work at anywhere, and trying to get hired full time is virtually impossible. Like they want you're working at their hours and you have to be on call all the time. It's been my experience with virtually any work position these days. But it's been like that since I was in my late teens. So we didn't. I don't think Canada relied so much on schools to do all the training for the employers. It was mostly employer led, I think. So and the rent was much more. The value of the currency was much higher. The purchasing power was much higher 40 years ago. So once they delinked it from gold, from like precious metal standards, that's where it started to fall off the cliff. So that's a big issue, and I didn't realize it until I was in my late 20s. All these details, and
Mhm.
studying these things in university. So, and like I said, talk to older people, and they'll say it's nothing to do. It's not much to do with the current administration in Canada. The politicians have been abusing us for a very long time.
That's exactly true. I mean, a lot of people accuse me that I'm, pro liberal or pro NDP because a lot of my content is criticizing current government policies, but that is certainly not true because I always try to. First of all, I'm apolitical. I consider all politicians cut from the same cloth. They always try to sell you the same stories, same promises, but when they come into power, they exactly do the same thing. But what I try to do is I try to highlight the issues in the policies and how this is having a cascading effect upon all of us in Canada. And the only purpose for me to bringing these issues up is to basically discuss them. You don't find them being discussed at the mainstream media, and find some solution. Maybe we can do something to get our lives better somehow. So that's the only purpose. So Dave, thanks for sharing this. Let's understand. Where were you born? Where were you raised? What's your professional background? And I understand. Finding career opportunities in Canada has never been easier. When I was moving to Canada, one of my close friends was moving to US in California because we were both in tech, and he was telling me, hey, consider again because you're moving to Canada. You don't have a lot of opportunities there, so you may have to reverse your decision and move to US at some point. I said, okay, we'll find out, well, when I get there. But he was true. When I compare myself with my friends and colleagues who moved to US, they're far ahead in terms of their professional career compared to myself. So that's because there's a lot of opportunities in the US, the pay scale, the taxes. There's a huge difference in terms of when you compare the ecosystem between the two countries. But let's just get into your professional background in terms of where you were born, where were you raised, what was your professional background, your studies, and then how you get into this whole health thing that I wanted to understand.
In my late teens, I was working at a grocery store part time. So I became interested. I was always interested in computers, like in information technology. You could almost say it was the younger people were there was a whole propaganda campaign from like Microsoft and all these companies to get people into information technology. So I thought that was the issue. I thought that was my path. But then I started realizing when I started going to school, I enrolled in general studies, political science, these types of studies. And I started realizing that I started seeing things in the horizon. I started seeing artificial intelligence, offshoring, outsourcing. And I said, wow. And it was almost like my dreams were shattered. That's what usually happens when you're young. You start to realize that the world's not what you
Hmm.
thought it was. Before that, I obtained some information technology certificates. Then I was working part time at a university in southwestern Ontario. That's where I was born, southwestern Ontario, near Detroit, Michigan. And so I started studying these things, and I started working part time as a computer consultant. And I started seeing all these these items that I mentioned: artificial intelligence and offshoring and outsourcing, and that's where my health issues. I've always had those since I was a young person, but I just kind of let it slide, and I didn't know what to do. And so I had all these people, mainly females in my life, talking about, holistic this, holistic that. They would go to chiropractors and massage therapists, and they weren't acting or looking any better. So just confusing to me. So I just kind of let it go until I eventually went into the doctor's office and asked, for medication, and he put me on medication. And I said, okay, these seem to be working, and they did. But then you start getting more and more side effects. And that's the kind of thing that's happening with the economy and everything we see now. The politicians are just using uh, band-aid approaches to virtually everything, and they're not fixing anything. And they just kind of kick the can down the road. And now we're starting to see the results of that. So, and then I started, after university, in my IT certifications, I started traveling across the country looking for any work I could find. And I was getting work in call centers and in office settings. And then I didn't see much of a difference between office settings and call centers, because I was starting to see in IT like 15, 20 years ago that they were outsourcing and offshoring a lot of work. And I'm just like, how is this possible? They're getting all these people from other countries to work for even programmers and even like high level people. And I said, how is this possible? How is this sustainable? So I started to really question everything. So and I did more traveling. I taught English overseas as well. And I started doing a lot more studying. I started hearing about people, Ron Paul in the 2008 election, the big market crash we had back then. I started thinking, wow, this is scary stuff. It's nothing like
Yeah.
it's nothing like my parents taught me, or nothing like anybody taught me. And I started saying, I'm on my own. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Exactly. And this is also the same similar, learning journey for me. I was, by degree, I'm an electrical engineer. I never understood finance or economy before. I mean, we have studied some subjects, but I was not really into it. But I always had some sort of a curiosity in terms of, how does this whole banking system work? How does this money, flows into economy? Who controls it? How the banks print the money? All that stuff. And in the past, I should say 6 7 years, I started studying into it, and that really opened my mind in terms of understanding the world from that lens, how the geopolitical system works, because it's all centered about the money creation and who controls the money. So that really opened my mind and my exposure. So now I understand things much better than what I used to back then. So totally understand that. So you mentioned that there were some issues with regards to getting employed in Canada, right? Because you were seeing the number of jobs being outsourced, even though if it's a managerial opportunity, people were actually working from outside of Canada for the companies. So was that the only factor that you think, okay, there is no future for me in Canada, maybe I should try it better somewhere else, or are there other factors as well?
Oh, the housing situation. Yeah, I was renting rooms when I was going to other cities to looking for work. I would rent a room because I didn't know if I was going to be. I don't know what was going to happen, so I didn't want to. Especially 10 years,
Mhm.
even 10 years ago, the rent was crazy. So I didn't. Sorry if there's honking. There's a lot of noise in this area.
Okay.
I didn't know what to do, so I just renting rooms, and then uh, that was a factor because I'd get things stolen by other roommates, and there was a lot of people in my similar situation. It's very common. So that's what the housing the housing issue, and then the health issue. Didn't know what to do, and so I heard all these things about food and magical supplements for 30 years from my mother. My mother was sick. My father was sick, but he just thought that was in left field. He thought it was like bonkers. He thought the only people that can help you is the doctor, because that's what probably his friends told him. So the housing issue and the medical issue, and then um, yeah, and the social issue as well, and trying to meet people.
Mhm.
It's very difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of people, especially the new immigrants, they value the free healthcare in Canada. You think completely otherwise, even 10 years ago.
It's good. It's
Uh,
good for acute issues. It's good. We should call it sick care, not health care. We should call it sick care because it's only mainly when you get sick. It's mainly based on acute issues.
If you are an investor in the US, in Canada, or in Europe, and you are considering investing into Dubai real estate market, this video is for you, because we have a platform called Stake, which allows you to invest into the residential real estate market and start earning rental income right away without going through a lengthy documentation process or coming up with a heavy down payment. Stake is built upon the concept of crowdfunding. So it is democratizing the entire investment strategy, and allows you to own a single unit of the entire investment portfolio. So you don't have to own the entire property, right? You can be part of the pool that can actually own a piece of property, a piece of real estate. So that allows you to start with as low as 2,000 dirhams, and you can slowly ramp up. So as you start investing into it, you can not only own a bit of real estate, but you also get a portion of the rental income on monthly basis. So it's a passive investment strategy, diversifying your portfolio from traditional North American or European markets into Dubai, which is hustling and bustling and growing very fast, and allows you to build your wealth over time. So don't delay. There is a link down there in the description. If you click on this, it will give you free 200 dirhams in your account right away to start with, and you can thank me later. Yeah, yeah, I understand. Okay. So and that actually got you into this whole new gig that you're working on in terms of creating this health consulting type of company. Like, tell us more about what are you offering as part of your business to anybody in Canada or outside Canada, and what actually got you into it.
I grew up around entrepreneurship. My father was into entrepreneurship, and I had a website about 15 years ago, that I was running online, and I was making it was mainly affiliate marketing and that type of thing. It was an experiment. So, and then that kind of broke down, and then I went back to a school, a public school, and it was mainly international students there that didn't speak English, didn't have the certifications that they claimed. I talked to them, and I said, "What is going on here?" And the instructors told me they shouldn't be here. They said it in front of the whole class. So this is about 6 years ago. So this issues with the international students going on, uh, the scandal going on has been a long time. When I actually started my part-time university position, they told me they wanted more locals working there because they had too many international students working these places. So they knew that long ago. So anyway, about 5 years ago, I said to myself, I discovered the truth, like the main root modality that was involved with biochemistry of the body and how your body behaves, and epigenome and genetics and things like that. So that was 5 years ago. So because I used my experience, my entrepreneurial experience with marketing, affiliate marketing, and website creation to launch this idea that I'm having now. So, and I'm barely even started yet, and I'm not
Okay.
even. I'm almost finished the school program for it. And these days, you have to get a school. You have to go to school for everything, because if you don't, then you have to get a certification. If you don't, then people won't believe what you're saying.
Yeah, I think it's more than that. I think the government won't allow you to practice. It's more about the regulations and control than anything. Because I think if you look into other countries, people can, if you know something, you can start offering services. Of course, there has to be some concern about the health and safety. But outside of the healthcare, if you know something, you can start offering your help from day one. So okay, so what is your offer as part of your program? Like, what are you offering? Are you offering therapies or some sort of a medication, or what is the actual end product?
I would be classified as a holistic nutritionist, but I'm trying to redefine that, because nutrition is not only food, and that's what I thought it was. That's why I thought it was just trivial. I said, "Oh, so eat some oranges and you'll be fine." And I said, "How is this going to solve somebody with cancer, or like the major depression or whatever?" And I said, so the I cannot legally treat or diagnose conditions. Only a medical doctor or a Western medical person can do that. That's their title. That's
Mhm.
the only thing they can. That's what they're legally allowed to do. I can't do that. These types of things. But I do individualized assessment of your lifestyle, biochemistry, and it's very powerful. What you put in your mouth, you wouldn't realize, but you might need more vitamin C than or you might need more of these nutrients than you can get by mouth, and we don't realize that. I didn't really realize that. So it's really interesting
Mhm.
stuff. Yep.
Okay. So in terms of your end product, do you offer like consulting sessions to those patients and analyzing their lifestyle, their eating habits, their sleeping habits, and that's how you recommend that they should change something, following some sort of like a script or anything? Like, what's your recommendation?
I have them fill out forms at the beginning, and I do physical observations, and these are symptomatology forms. And it might sound benign, but it's not. And then from these forms, I output a graph, and I show you all the elements in your body, organ function, uh, what's sluggish, what's not, what's overactive, and
Hmm.
and without blood work. But blood work helps. But blood work is only a snapshot in time. So a lot of people will say, "What's the science behind this?" Is that it's systems biology, it's systems science or holistic science. Western medicine is mainly based on reductionism. Reductionism means they reduce the body to its component parts for easier study and mainly for only treating symptoms. And doctors will send you to a specialist, and they'll only target those parts of your body for treating symptoms and symptom management. Yeah.
Hmm. And how do you see the role of pharma into this whole thing? Like, you complain about, should I say complain? You highlighted the issues with regards to the healthcare system in Canada or in general in the Western society. How do you see the role of big pharma in there?
It still has a role, but it has gone overboard in the past 50 years. And it has leaned toward too much of the reductionist side of medicine. Instead of attacking the germ when you get sick, instead of waiting for that to happen, how about we try to prevent that? We try to make the terrain of the body. Remember, we're mostly water, so try to
Mm,
make the terrain, the cells of your body, optimal. So there's terrain model of disease and there's the germ model of disease. So you try to make the body optimal environment so the germs or pathogens do not take hold. Yeah.
yeah. And I think so. This is, I always try to understand better, and I'm always curious about, back in the days, let's say even before my time, even before my parents' time, there was no pharma, right? And people used to get sick. They used to get better as well by using the natural, whatever they have available in terms of like herbs or natural treatment. I think in the last 50, 60 years, when we have seen the rise of big pharma companies, now everything is just drugs. If you get sick, you must take drugs, whether this is Tylenol or paracetamol or antibiotics. There's no other, there's no other choice. That is becoming a norm now. And I always think, okay, this was not like this 50, 60 years ago. Like something has happened to change the entire system in terms of how we treat diseases. And we completely now rely on these drugs. And of course there are some theories behind that as well, and people will call conspiracy theories here. But the role of big pharma is beyond that. Issuing the drugs, there's a lot of money financing things behind it, and how they basically create lobbies with the government. We know that this whole COVID thing, what happened in the last 4 years. So that's why I always try to understand much better in terms of how this whole big pharma game works behind the scene. um, so now you are in Ecuador, right? So why Ecuador? Like, there are a lot of countries, in South America or even in Europe as well. Why did you choose Ecuador?
Yeah, I actually do have a European passport, but I never used it because I haven't been there, but my understanding is that the Western world is there's too much bureaucracy involved in everything, and the banks are not they're not encouraging saving. They've been encouraging spending consumption for the past 25 years since around 9/11. So, and the weather here is much more hospitable than Canada. It's roughly room temperature, a little bit warmer than that almost every day, and they use the U.S. dollar here. And
Oh, nice.
yeah, and the people here appear to be hospitable to foreigners. They actually desire people to come here to set up roots. And like I said, in Canada, it's very anti-human in the Western world, but in Canada especially, it's a very, in my opinion, it's a very anti-human, anti. It's a very anti-human environment. They appear to they've been doing this for a long time. They over regulate, they overtax, they don't pay you any interest in the bank. You're basically
Yeah.
living hand to mouth, and and you get sick. You're going to get sick, and then when you go to the doctor, you get sicker. And the food we have is expensive. It's not available. It should be everywhere. We should have healthy food everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so let's talk about this whole thing. So I think over-regulation and over-taxation is definitely something that we are all seeing not right now. Like, regulation has been a problem in Canada for almost forever. But these things, whenever you see new projects get started, there's a lot of red tape and bureaucracy and regulation that somebody has to go through. I was watching one of the videos, interview from Kevin O'Leary, and I also reference him onto my channel as well. And he was absolutely right, and he was basically telling the Canadians, the reason why we are not getting any investment in Canada is because of this red tape. There's a lot of bureaucracy, regulations. Like it takes forever to get a permit. He was in data center business, right? So because of the AI boom, he was investing into a lot of new data centers, and a lot of capital is actually moving into US for the same reason, because it's much easier to get the permits issued and get the project started like within a matter of like 6 or 8 weeks. In the US versus in Canada, it can take months, if not years. And that's why the investors are actually dropping this idea of investing into Canada, even though Kevin is Canadian himself, and of course he wants to invest in Canada, but because the system is not built to incentivize the investors, they're not coming here. So, and it goes into pretty much every single industry. You look at telecoms, there's a lot of oligarchs and monopoly. You only have three providers. The, as soon as the fourth provider comes out, it get acquired. Right, same goes with the banking system. You only have five big banks. Nobody can survive except them. If an international bank comes in Canada, like HSBC, they get bought up, right? They get acquired. So that's really the story of Canada. It's oligarchs, it's monopoly. Um, that doesn't really create the environment for entrepreneurs like yourself, right? If you wanted to build something, a business, you have very limited options in Canada because of all these things. And I'm not bashing Canada here at all. I'm just highlighting the issues the entrepreneurs and solopreneurs they face this issue here in Canada. That's the reason why people like you leave Canada and try your lucks elsewhere, either in the US or in any another country, because they're so anti innovation, right? You can innovate things at the university, but bringing the idea from a university into the commercial field, it's a process, and it takes a lot of effort and investment and help from the government bodies. We don't see that last mile of that process in Canada any easier. So what is your plan in terms of taking this whole new business to the next step? Like, what's your commercial model and how you want to scale this up in the future?
I'm trying to perform marketing to a limited extent at this time, and I'm trying to appeal to people through shows like this. When you look at it, when you look at all the measurements, even the blood measurements and even the tissue measurements, like I do hair mineral analysis and live blood cell analysis. When you look at all these things, even the limited test that doctors run, you see that most of us in the Western world, especially in Canada, most of us are subclinically sick, and that's a big reason why that the government, the public bureaucracy has become so large. They don't trust us enough to do our own thing. I'm not saying that they take this factor into account, but if that's the base root of it, most of us are subclinically sick on many levels. So we don't trust the government. Doesn't trust us. We don't trust it. We stop losing trust in interactions with others. So we started to see that
Yeah.
now.
Can you explain this subclinically sick means, for the audience?
There are many symptoms, subclinical symptoms that in our daily life that we don't see, that we don't obtain these kind of assessments at a doctor's office. Our smell, blackness under our eyes, white spots on our fingernails, graying of hair, quickening of aging, all these things that we consider normal, even cavities. We go to the dentist, we think we need employment. That my parents put this in my mind. They think we need employer health benefits to keep well. I said, no, your employer is going to drive your health to the ground. And they don't give you proper health care by insurance. I mean, this is just crazy. So
Yeah.
these symptoms that I showed, that I told you, and others like lack of energy, and then we drink energy drinks thinking that's going to solve our problem. That's basically just a band-aid. That's not addressing
Mhm.
the internal pond of your body, why you're getting sick or why you're getting a lack of
Yeah.
energy. And all these things translate to the GDP of the nation.
Oh, of course, of course. If the population is not mentally and physically healthy, then of course it will reflect into the economic output as well. What do you see the role of drinking water in all this that you just mentioned? I recently discovered the quality of drinking water here in Canada is very poor. Even though I believe all the time, Canada has the largest lakes and the rivers in the world, and we just should have, the healthiest water in this country. But that is far from from the reality now. Can you just explain to the audience, what is the quality of water here in Canada?
And funny enough, I actually worked at a water plant as a summer student long ago, and it's mainly it's the lack the infrastructure has not been maintained for 50 years. The pipes that distribute all the water are garbage. So everyone,
Mm,
there are so many people that claim they have. Okay, how do I say this? There are many people I've encountered over the years that have a socialist mindset, if I want to call it that, and they say, "Well, the water is the best in Canada." I said, who tells them that? Have they ever visited a
mm,
water plant? What they put in the water, how it's manufactured, all these factors they haven't they're basically just repeating things like parrots. So
mhm,
the water quality, you if you compare it to Ecuador and other places, you could say that maybe the water quality, the municipal water quality, it could be better, or it could be better in Canada. You still need to use a water filter wherever you go. I would not be consuming the same water that I flush my toilet with anywhere, even in
mhm.
Canada. That's a big factor in anywhere. The water, we're mainly composed of water, like I said. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I recently discovered this whole water quality issue because I live part of these, southern Ontario where the water is really hard, and we must deploy basically the water softener in order to make that water usable. And even after getting the water softener done, you still need the reverse osmosis process to kind of make it more filtered water. And I was using a provider. I cannot name that on the channel, and I had the system installed since I bought this property. But even after that, the water is not really to the levels where it should be considered safe to drink, right? And I did not know that. I had one of the guy came to my property to test the water, and I was shocked, how bad that water quality was compared to what was sold to me from a provider, that this system will actually make your water much better to drink. um, and I can say 90% of the people have no idea what they're drinking, right? Even from the bottled water that you buy from the store, that's also garbage. Like, that's not also not a drinkable. I mean, it's a drinkable water, but it doesn't have the stuff that you think it should have. Like, it has a lot of chemicals, a lot of chlorine, fluorine, that is not really good for our health anyway. So that's another topic that I want to discuss on my channel to educate people, how to kind of improve your water quality. And before that, I think you have to understand what goes into the water that we drink, right? The water that comes to you, to your property through this distribution system, it has a lot of chemicals. And you should understand what those chemicals are and how those chemicals are affecting your health, your skin, and then and of course the finance side of it, because that water, when you wash it, your body, your house, you clean your house, your dishes, that consumes a lot of soap as well, right? Because if the water is hard and then it has a lot of chemicals, it takes a lot of soap in order to mix with it, and then and does do its job in terms of cleaning it. If the water quality is good, you shouldn't need a lot of soap.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, hard
Yeah.
water. Yeah, there's a reason why we have so many problems with high blood pressure and cardiovascular issues. It's not only the food; it's also the water. So water that is hard water is high in um, uh, the water hardness is defined by the amount of calcium and magnesium. So we don't often obtain the correct forms of magnesium and the correct forms of calcium. So when we
Hmm.
get too much of certain minerals, especially our arteries, our body, and our arteries, our tissues start to literally become they start to harden, so they
Decay,
become
yeah.
less flexible. So
Exactly.
the water quality is also a factor. And when I worked, this might sound conspiratorial as well, because many people have heard these think they're strange things, but it's not actually It's not actually mainly fluoride. It's a different form of fluoride that comes from the production of substances, harmful substances in industrial manufacturing. They put sodium. What is it called? I can't even pronounce it. Hydrofluoric acid. It's an acid, and it has fluoride
Hmm.
in it. But yeah, these all
Yeah.
these things affect how we think and how our health manifests. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, Dave, thanks for all this information. I think the audience will like it, and find it more beneficial for them. So, what are your plans in terms of coming back to Canada? Do you see any hopes in terms of getting Canada better in the next 5 to 10 years? You know, something happened magically and then things start getting better? What's your forecast?
I mean, I don't want to stay here. I'd rather stay in the country I grew up in, but it's not the country I grew up in anymore. And if I return to Canada, I'm serious. I would buy a cargo van and turn it into a mini apartment because I no longer have relatives to stay with. So I would have to set up my own, therefore I'd have to set up my own accommodations.
Right.
And living in an apartment in Canada, not only the cost, but you have to ask the bureaucracy is so high that you have to even ask the landlord for permission to hang a picture on a wall.
Yeah. And not only that, there's a lot of other expenses that comes along with that, right? You're talking about the renting, but if you, let's say, if you buy a property, you have to pay land transfer tax, you have to pay municipality tax, you have to pay other taxes that comes along with that. So even though if you outright own the property, you really don't own the property because you have to pay property taxes. As soon as you stop paying property taxes, your property will be confiscated.
Yeah. And,
um,
and when if you buy a car, you have to pay the transfer fee, and then if you sell it, the other person has to pay the transfer tax. I mean, it's just this is whack.
this was so unbelievable for me because I lived in UK for 12 years. I think in pretty much in Europe, you don't pay tax on a used car. Like that was a very common sense thing in the UK and the Europe. When I came to Canada, that was the shocker for me to realize when you buy a used car, even it's a 15 years old used car, you have to pay tax to the government. But why? Because the person who purchased that car from the manufacturer, they have already paid taxes on this. Why somebody has to pay taxes for a used commodity each time they exchange hands? This is unbelievable.
Many people that want to come to Canada, I hear it here. I hear it in this place all the time. Ecuadorians, I hear them all the time saying they want to go to Canada, and I hear them say there's all kinds of free things involved. And I'm not disparaging them. I would do the same. I was considering going to
Yeah.
Germany with my European passport because I heard that they have free tuition. But then I started thinking to myself, I said, who is paying for all this stuff? And like we were saying, we're talking about uh, all the fees you pay for used cars and all these details that we don't hear about. You only hear the rosy picture. You only hear the positive things about Canada, and a lot. There's not enough critical thinking going on. And I see these stories from how these international students, they say they got scammed. They said, are they not going to take any responsibility for their life? Are they always going to play the victim?
Yeah.
Oh,
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, the taxpayer bears the burden. Whatever you get quote unquote free in country, it's all coming from the taxpayer's pocket. And I think one of the challenge that we have in Canada is those taxes are not going to get lower. They are only going to get up over the time because there's something called unfunded liabilities, which includes healthcare and pension. The government needs to have the influx of new money coming into these funds in order to pay the boomers for their retirement and their healthcare. So they need people. I think a lot of okay, immigration is definitely an issue here because over immigration is not going to help. But the government needs to have taxes coming in from these immigrants to fund those unfunded liabilities. That's their that's their game plan, right? If they don't exactly, if they don't bring immigrants, there's not enough taxes coming into the pool, which is not going to fund the healthcare and the retirement and the old age pension that needs to be funded. It's not funded. The government needs this Ponzi scheme to get going before it collapses. I think that's really the problem, and a general public doesn't understand that, and that's really the reason why they keep bringing immigrants.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah. Go ahead.
No,
Yeah,
finish your thought.
yeah. The Ponzi scheme, it is collapsing, and when it does, I think we're going to see a revaluation of currencies. There's going to be major strife because the countries that are going to get shafted, they're going to get shortchanged. They're not going to be happy. So
Yeah.
once they start saying we have to adopt maybe a Bitcoin based currency or a metal based currency, and then somebody gets shortchanged, there's going to be a world war or something going on.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. Especially this whole global reserve currency for US dollar. Yes, some countries are kind of diverting away from it, but of course the US won't let it happen before a big war, right? So that's really the reality. And I think countries like Canada, where their currency is not the global reserve currency, we are at the mercy of the foreign exchange market, right? So, and then we're seeing, because of all these economical issues, lower GDP and high deficit spending, the Canadian dollar is keep falling against USD, and that is also, you know, basically affecting our quality of life here, because everything gets expensive when your currency gets cheaper against the other currencies, because we import a lot of stuff here, right? And we pay in terms of the exchange rate that is set by the market. And if you look at Canadian dollar, it's keep falling against USD, and I think it is expected to keep fall because of all the economical issues we have. And the more it falls, the more expensive the things are going to be for us, because we don't produce a lot of stuff here in Canada. We import, especially the food, which is coming from other countries like California, US, Mexico, and other countries. So it's unfortunate for sure. But I think, to finish on a good note, I think Canada is still one of the better places in the world. Like, there's a lot of bad places in the world where people are suffering in terms of the basic human rights and education and food. I mean, I just wanted to finish this on a good note, that Canada is still one of the best places. We have some challenges, and I think that those challenges needs hard decisions to fix them. And I think looking at politicians, if they're going to magically solve these issues, is a fool's paradise. Politicians cannot solve this. I think it has to be solved by the private market. They have to deregulate some stuff here in Canada, so that the free market can figure it out. Like, in the history, we have seen the private companies, the private market has been coming up with those solutions, and then the market finds the price itself. You don't have to regulate each and everything. This product has to be priced that way. The market can figure it out. Like, it's all simple demand and supply. And if we let the free market to work, it can find solutions, and as a society as a whole, we get better over time. So I just wanted to finish this on a better note, to not to offend a lot of Canadians.
Yeah, we need to fix the food supply. We need to have more quality food available everywhere, and we need to fix the currency, because everything is dependent on these things.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. So thanks, Dave. This is very insightful. I hope all the good luck for your new gig. I hope things get better for you, and you come back to Canada at some point. But I understand the challenges you're facing. So good luck with that.
At least a possibility of getting work, but it's just how long you're going to keep it, and you might need to work remote, and you might still need to get the thing in your arm.
Of course, yeah. We cannot talk about that because my channel gets shut down immediately. Anyway, thanks, Dave. Yeah, wish you good luck, and yeah, we can connect sometime later. Take care. Are you a non-US tax resident and looking to open a business in the US? Well, this video is very important for you, so watch it till the end. Basically, if you are a non-US tax resident, which means you don't have SSN, which is your tax identification number, which means when you open a bank account, or you open a Stripe account or PayPal account or Amazon business account or any business account, you need your SSN number in order to open any of these accounts in the US. While if you are a non-US tax resident, which means you don't have SSN with you, you can have another identification which is called ITIN. So ITIN is similar 9-digit number which is used for tax purposes if you are a non-US tax resident. So whenever you apply for a business account or bank account or payment processing account like PayPal or Stripe or even Amazon FBA seller, or registering a business in the US, you can use ITIN instead of SSN. This will help you to set up all of these things even though you're not a US tax resident. So if you're in Canada, Latin America, Europe, UK, Australia, or anywhere in the world, you can apply for ITIN, and you can use ITIN to register a business, open up the business accounts, open up the payment processing account in the US, and pretty much do all the tax related stuff using ITIN even though you don't have SSN. One of the unique use case for ITIN is if you are a non-tax resident, but you have a US based income. Like, for example, you have a rental property in the US or any other business that is generating income from the US, then depending upon the tax treaty from your parent country, you may have to file taxes in the US, right? So when you have to file taxes in the US, you need ITIN because you have to file your tax return on a Form 1040-NR. Okay, so if you are a non-tax resident, you need the Form 1040-NR in order to file your tax return, and when you fill up that form, you will be required to enter your ITIN because you don't have SSN. So in order to enter your tax identification number, you have to have ITIN number ready. Okay, this is a very common use case for all the non-tax resident that is generating income in the US. They need to file tax return. Depending upon your tax treaty between your parent country, you may need ITIN as well. So how do you get that? Well, there are some companies available on the internet that will help you to get you the ITIN, but they may charge between $400 to $600 per application. We have a company called ITIN, and they are one of the quickest in terms of submitting the application. So they will help you out in terms of collecting the documentation, help you out in terms of answering your questions, and help you out in terms of submitting the application. Now, the typical application process times takes between 4 to 14 weeks, but the ITIN people only take 48 hours to collect the information, help you out in the journey, submit your application, and from that point onwards, it's basically IRS. IRS can take between 2 to 12 weeks depending upon their volume of the applications, but throughout the process, they will handhold you in terms of opening up the accounts, help you to open up the FBA account or Stripe account or PayPal account, or guide you in terms of the entire process. They're pretty quick to respond. They have people speaking English and Spanish and Arabic, and they can give you very competitive rates as well. Plus, if you use my referral link, which will give you extra $50 discount when you purchase their services. So if you are looking to open a business in the US, start your journey today, apply for ITIN. Even though if you're not looking to open a business now, you should have ITIN just in case in the future, if you want to open a business, you're ready from tax standpoint. So check the link in the description below, and let's get back to the video.